And today, we are taking a deep dive into Brussels. This isn't just a checklist of sites, though. Our goal is to really understand what makes Brussels tick, exploring its incredible history, its unique character today, and that fascinating balancing act it performs on the world stage.
And we've pulled together a fantastic stack of sources for this. One gives us the long view, sort of tracing Brussels' story from its earliest beginnings through centuries of change and, conflict.
Right. And another source acts like a personal guide, showing us how to navigate the city now, connecting the historical dots to the places and experiences you can actually encounter today.
Yeah, that one's really practical. And a third source provides a really insightful perspective on what it means to live in Brussels. It gives us a sense of its everyday rhythm, how it feels to call this multifaceted place home.
So let's dive in. Our mission is to extract the most important insights, the real nuggets, from these sources to give you a well-rounded picture of Brussels' past, present, and that unique energy it generates. Let's get started on this fascinating story.
Okay. So to understand Brussels, you really have to start with the landscape itself. I mean, long before any city existed, this area was defined by forests, wetlands, and the twists and turns of the Seine River.
Right.
Our history source tells us about early inhabitants, like Celtic tribes, and later Roman influence in the surrounding region, places like Anderlecht and Uccle. But there wasn't really a concentrated urban center right here initially.
So it wasn't like Rome or London popping up as a major settlement early on. It was more waterlogged. Is that fair?
That's pretty much it. A marshy, slightly inconvenient place, actually. Which, the source explains, is the most likely origin of the name. Bruxelles, meaning something like home in the marsh.
Huh. Gives you a real picture.
It really does. And it stayed relatively undeveloped until a key moment in the 10th century.
Okay, what happened then?
Well, around 979 AD, Charles, the Duke of Lower Lotharingia, he saw the strategic potential, particularly an island in the Seine River.
Why there?
It was defensible, and crucially, it sat right on the important trade route between Bruges and Cologne. So establishing a fortified castle there wasn't just about protection, it was a calculated move to control commerce.
Okay.
This moment, our source says, is really the first solid foundation of urban life for Brussels.
So from a small fort on a muddy island, it started its slow build. Control eventually shifted, right, to the Counts of Leuven.
Yes, who became the Dukes of Brabant, and Brussels began to gain political clout. Our source notes that its location on the river and its growing prominence made it ideal for merchants and craftsmen.
Especially with trade picking up.
Exactly. This was especially true as the textile trade, particularly in wool and cloth, just exploded in significance from the 11th to the 13th century.
Right, the famous Flemish cloth.
That's the one. And this economic activity fueled growth. Guilds, the associations of craftsmen and merchants started to become powerful forces in the city. Brussels was granted a city charter, formalizing its rights and governance.
Making it official.
Pretty much. And by the 13th century, they built their first stone city walls. You can actually still stumble upon fragments of them today, a literal layer of that early history.
Wow. And all of this set the stage for what our source calls Brussels' golden age, really hitting its stride in the 14th and 15th centuries.
Yeah, that booming wool and cloth trade brought immense wealth, and the guilds became incredibly influential. They were practically running the city in some ways.
And that power and wealth, it's most visible in the Grand Place, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It really took its magnificent form in the 15th century. The town hall, for instance, built over 5 decades.
50 years.
Yeah. It's described as just this bold declaration of the city's ambition and prosperity. That intricate spire is such a symbol of civic pride.
It's stunning. But it wasn't just beautiful, though, right? The source makes it clear the Grand Place was the absolute epicenter of urban life back then.
Totally. Markets, public festivals, political announcements, even public punishments or executions happened right there in that square. It was the beating heart.
Busy place.
Definitely. And its importance grew further under the Dukes of Brabant, but particularly when the powerful Burgundian dukes, figures like Philip the Good, favored Brussels as one of their principal residences.
So royalty moving in?
Kind of, yeah. Their patronage attracted artists and scholars, bringing a period of significant cultural and artistic flourishing. Lots of money, lots of art.
But as wealth and influence grew, so did the potential for conflict, I imagine. The 16th century brought major upheaval under Habsburg rule. How did that happen?
It arrived via marriage, actually. Mary of Burgundy married Maximilian I, and their grandson, Charles V, who ruled this vast empire, spent significant time in Brussels. He considered it a major capital, which enhanced its status, with palaces like Gutenberg.
Prestige.
But this was also the era of the Protestant Reformation sweeping across Europe, and the Habsburgs were staunchly Catholic.
So tension.
Big time. They responded with brutal repression, including the Inquisition. Our history source points to a specific, deeply symbolic event that really highlights this tension: the execution of the popular counts of Egmont and Horn.
Where did that happen?
Right on the Grand Place, 1568.
Wow. Back in the heart of the city. That must have sent shockwaves.
Absolutely. It was ordered by the Duke of Alba, the Habsburg governor. It wasn't just cruel. It was seen as a direct challenge to the local nobility and their traditional liberties. It became a major trigger for the widespread revolt that spiraled into the 80 Years' War.
A long conflict.
Very. Brussels remained under Spanish Habsburg control, but it was a time marked by religious persecution and the constant shadow of war.
So the 17th century continued under Spanish rule. Were there any bright spots?
Well, there were periods of cultural revival, yeah. Figures like Archdukes Albert and Isabella, they sponsored Baroque art and architecture, trying to bring back some splendor. But then came a catastrophic moment that nearly erased centuries of building.
Oh no, what happened?
August 1695. During the 9 Years' War, the French army, under Louis XIV, launched this devastating bombardment of Brussels.
A bombardment.
Yes, a deliberate attack. Our source describes the destruction as just immense, over 4,000 buildings obliterated. The Grand Place, that symbol of the city's pride, was almost entirely reduced to rubble.
No. It's so hard to picture that stunning square is just ruins.
It really is. The town hall was one of the few major structures to survive relatively intact. Maybe luck, maybe deliberate avoidance, it's hard to say. But the surrounding guild halls and private homes were just gone.
Devastating.
Completely. But here's where we get a truly powerful insight into Brussels' character: the response.
Okay, tell me about it.
Our source emphasizes the extraordinary speed and collective will of the rebuilding. The guilds and citizens, showing this remarkable resilience and civic pride, rebuilt the entire Grand Place in just 4 years.
4 years? That's unbelievable.
Isn't it? And they didn't just rebuild, they reimagined it in the dominant Baroque style of the time, creating the breathtaking, harmonious ensemble we see today.
Wow. So the square we admire today isn't just old. It's literally a monument to the city's ability to be almost completely destroyed and then rebuild itself quickly and beautifully. That resilience, it seems like a core part of its identity.
It absolutely is. It's a theme that keeps coming up. After the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, control shifted again, this time to the Austrian Habsburgs. The 18th century was generally more peaceful, which allowed Brussels to recover and modernize.
Bit of breathing room.
Exactly. Austrian governors, like the popular Prince Charles Alexander of Lorraine, initiated urban improvements and supported cultural institutions like libraries and academies.
And Enlightenment ideas were spreading too.
They were, leading to new ways of thinking. But this era of peace wasn't without its own tensions.
Oh.
Well, Emperor Joseph II's top-down reforms in the late 18th century, they kind of rubbed many people the wrong way. They felt imposed.
Leading to
The short-lived Brabant Revolution in 1789. Brussels briefly became the symbolic capital of an independent state. It showed a growing sense of political identity, even though the revolution ultimately failed.
another sign of that independent spirit. Then came the French.
Yes, the French revolutionary armies arrived in 1795, annexing the region. This brought radical, transformative changes: the abolition of feudalism, the introduction of the Napoleonic Code, which centralized law, suppression of church power. Big stuff.
Sounds like modernization, but maybe forced.
Exactly. These changes laid the groundwork for a modern state structure, improved infrastructure, definitely. But they also generated resentment due to heavy taxation, conscription for Napoleon's wars, and the treatment of the church.
And French rule ended after Waterloo, right?
Yeah.
Which was fought nearby.
Famously just south of Brussels, 1815. But those French ideas of liberty and equality, they had certainly left their mark on the city's thinking.
Okay, so post-Napoleon, the great powers decided Belgium's fate at the Congress of Vienna.
Right. They decided to unite the southern Netherlands, including Brussels, with the northern Netherlands under Dutch rule, forming the United Kingdom of the Netherlands under King William I.
How did that go down?
Not well, ultimately. This period, 1815 to 1830, was brewing with dissatisfaction. It was a real clash of cultures and priorities.
Like what?
Well, the Dutch king imposed his language, Dutch, which alienated the powerful French-speaking elite in Brussels and the South. He centralized authority, curtailed the influence of the Catholic Church. A lot of things that didn't sit well. Brussels became the hotbed of opposition.
And the spark that ignited the Belgian Revolution in 1830? It was an opera. Seriously.
It sounds unlikely, but yes. A performance of La Muette de Portichet, an opera with themes of national liberation, at the Monet Theatre in Brussels in August 1830.
What happened?
It sparked a riot that just escalated incredibly quickly. Street fighting, barricades went up, Dutch troops were eventually expelled from the city. Brussels was right at the heart of this revolution.
Yeah.
They declared independence, and Brussels became the capital of the newly formed Kingdom of Belgium.
And Leopold I became the first king in 1831, cementing Brussels' role as the political heart of the nation and solidifying that unique dual cultural identity, French and Dutch, that we still see today.
Exactly. And the period that followed right up to World War I was one of explosive growth. Brussels industrialized, expanded rapidly as the capital city. The population just soared.
Which must have meant massive changes to the city itself.
Huge changes. It led to massive urban planning projects, often inspired by Haussmann's transformation of Paris.
And one of the most significant, and maybe controversial, was covering up the Seine River.
Yes, in the 1860s and 70s, the river running through the center had become, frankly, an open sewer.
Yeah.
Polluted, prone to flooding, running through slums.
So they just paved over it.
Pretty much. Covering it up allowed for the creation of these grand central boulevards and monumental buildings. It was about creating a grand capital, but it literally paved over the old, less salubrious parts of the city center. A dramatic change.
Sounds like it. But this era also brought some amazing architecture, right? Art Nouveau.
Oh, absolutely. The Art Nouveau movement flourished in Brussels. Architects like Victor Horta left this incredible legacy of stunning organic buildings that are scattered throughout the city. They're world-renowned today.
You can still see them.
Yes, many are preserved. And King Leopold II also left his mark with significant investments in urban grandeur, creating major parks, the Royal Galleries, the Cinquantenaire Complex. Though it's important to acknowledge these grand projects were often funded by his brutal colonial ventures in the Congo.
Right, a difficult legacy there. So by the start of the 20th century, Brussels was a major, rapidly modernizing European capital, layered with centuries of history. What about the World Wars?
It endured both. German occupation in World War I, but relatively little physical destruction compared to some cities. World War II brought Nazi occupation, bombing, deportation of Jewish residents, a dark period.
And after the war?
Post-war development saw, some chaotic modernist planning, sometimes called Brusselization, where old neighborhoods were torn down for office blocks, but also moments of national pride like Expo 58 and the creation of that iconic structure, the Atomium.
It's the Atomium. We'll come back to that.
And then came the transformation that really cemented its global role today, becoming the de facto capital of Europe.
The EU connection.
Exactly. With the formation of the EEC, which evolved into the European Union, major institutions like the European Commission, the Council, the Parliament, they chose Brussels as their headquarters.
That must have fundamentally reshaped the city.
It absolutely did. It wasn't just an administrative change. It brought this huge influx of international residents, diplomats, lobbyists, officials, journalists, their families. It turned Brussels into a multilingual, multicultural melting pot, unlike almost any other city.
So how do our sources describe modern Brussels?
As incredibly vibrant and diverse, home to over 180 nationalities, officially bilingual in French and Dutch, but English is very widely spoken, especially in international circles and business.
So it manages to hold on to its history.
Yeah, that historical core, the medieval and Baroque beauty, the Art Nouveau gems, while also embracing contemporary design, street art, and this really forward-looking international outlook. It's a city that has repeatedly proven its ability to adapt and evolve. It keeps adding layers.
Which brings us perfectly to experiencing Brussels today. Our touring source does a wonderful job connecting all this history to the places you can actually visit. And I guess the absolute must-see first stop has to be the Grand Place.
Oh, without a doubt. And seeing it after hearing its history, the Golden Age wealth reflected in the guild halls, the town hall's defiance, the sheer drama of the destruction, and that rapid rebuilding in the Baroque style, it just makes the experience so much richer.
Yeah.
Our source calls it one of Europe's most beautiful squares, and standing there, you really feel that history and that astonishing resilience we talked about.
And if you time it right, in an even-numbered year in August, you might catch this spectacular flower carpet covering the entire square.
Oh, that's incredible. A beautiful temporary layer on that ancient stone.
So from that grandeur, you take a short walk to one of Brussels' most famous and maybe most baffling symbols, mannequin pics.
Ah, the little peeing statue.
Yes.
What's the deal with him?
What's the deal with him?
Well, our source points to him as a symbol of Brussels' unique sense of humor and maybe its rebellious, independent spirit. He's tiny, much smaller than people expect often.
Right.
And he's often dressed in these elaborate costumes, hundreds of them in his collection. And he has cousins now, too, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Shenik Piss, the peeing girl, and Zinika Piss, the peeing dog. Finding them is part of the fun, like a quirky little treasure hunt scattered through the city.
Okay, for a completely different kind of icon, architectural icon, there's the Atomium.
Right. Built for Expo 58, connecting back to that post-war period of innovation and optimism. It's such a striking futuristic structure, looks like a giant iron crystal molecule.
Can you go inside?
Yes, you can explore inside the spheres, there are exhibitions, and you get these amazing panoramic views of the city. It really represents a specific moment in Brussels' journey, a nod to its role on the world stage during that era.
And conveniently right next door is Mini Europe.
Yeah, with miniature versions of famous European landmarks. Our source highlights this as a perfect, almost playful connection to Brussels' modern identity as the EU capital. You see the little Eiffel Tower, the little Big Ben.
Cute. Now, we absolutely cannot talk about visiting Brussels without dedicating some serious time to the food.
Oh, definitely not. It's a major draw. Chocolate, of course. You have to start there.
Yes. Our touring source mentions seeking out artisan chocolatiers like Newhouse, Marcolini, Mary, Leonidas.
Yeah.
There are so many. Walking into these shops is an experience in itself, isn't it?
It really is. The smell, the artistry, you can sample, buy amazing gifts, or even take a workshop sometimes and learn how it's made.
And Belgian waffles. I know there are different kinds.
Yes. Our source explains the difference clearly. The Brussels waffle is lighter, rectangular, crispier. The Liège waffle is denser, chewier, often has uneven edges, and these little pearls of caramelized sugar baked into it.
Which one is better?
You have to try both. Ideally hot from a street vendor, maybe with just powdered sugar or some fruit. Simple and delicious.
And then there are the legendary Belgian fries. Or frites.
Oh, the frites. They're essential. Our source promises they're arguably the best in the world.
What makes them so special?
Perfectly crispy on the outside, fluffy inside, traditionally double fried in animal fat, though vegetable oil is common now too. The real experience is getting them from a fraiterie or frite-cot, like a dedicated fry shack.
Oh?
Places like Maison Antoine or Frit Flaggy are famous. Served in a paper cone, and crucially, with one of the many, many sauce options. Mayo is classic, but there are dozens. It's a simple pleasure elevated to an art form.
My mouth is watering already. Okay, beyond the food, there's more traditional grandeur like the Royal Palace.
Yes, the official palace of the king and queen, though they live elsewhere. It's this impressive neoclassical building. It's open to the public in the summer, usually late July to early September.
Anything particularly interesting inside?
Apparently, there's a fascinating mirror room with walls and ceiling inlaid with the iridescent wing cases of thousands of jewel beetles.
Wow, okay, that's unique.
It really is. And the palace sits on the edge of the lovely, peaceful Brussels Park, Parc de Bruxelles.
Nice place for a stroll. And for culture vultures, Mont des Arts seems like the place to be.
It's a fantastic complex, yeah. Built on a slope, so you get great views back towards the Grand Place spire, and it clusters several major museums.
Right.
Our source points out the Royal Museums of Fine Arts, a huge collection, including the Magritte Museum, dedicated to Belgium's famous surrealist painter, René Magritte. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, Magritte's amazing.
And also the Musical Instruments Museum, the MIM. It's worth visiting just for the building alone. It's housed in the stunning Art Nouveau building of the former Old England department store. Another beautiful link to that architectural movement we discussed.
That sounds great. Now, to experience different layers of the city's character, our sources suggest exploring specific districts, like the Sablon and the Marolles.
Yes, and they offer such a fantastic contrast, even though they're right next to each other. The Sablon is elegant, chic. It's known for its high-end antique shops, art galleries, posh chocolatiers, and the beautiful Gothic church, Notre Dame du Sablon. Its main square often hosts a really nice antique market on weekends.
Sounds quite refined.
It is. And then just a short walk downhill, maybe you take the Polower elevator, which gives you this amazing panoramic view over the lower town.
Oh, an elevator between districts.
Yeah, it connects the Place Polar near the Palace of Justice down to the Marolles. and you enter a completely different world.
How so?
The Marolles is the traditional working-class heart of Brussels. It has completely different vibe, more gritty, maybe more authentic, some would say. It's famous for its daily flea market at Place du Jeu de Bal, where you can find literally anything. Lots of street art, quirky shops, traditional pubs called estaminets.
So you really see the different social layers of the city right there.
Exactly. It's a living example of how different historical communities and layers coexist in the city, literally side by side, but with totally distinct atmospheres. It's fascinating.
And then, of course, you have the European Quarter. You can't ignore that part of modern Brussels' identity.
Absolutely essential for understanding its current global role. This is where the EU institutions are headquartered at the Commission, in the Berlaymont building, the Council, the Parliament complex.
You visit any of that?
Yes, our source recommends visiting the Parliamentarium. It's the visitor center for the European Parliament, and it gives you really good interactive insight into how the EU works and European democracy.
So it's not just office blocks.
No, and it's actually greener than you might think. It's right next to Parc Leopold, a nice leafy space. And nearby is the huge Parc Cinquantenaire with its grand triumphal arch and several museums like Auto World and the Royal Museum of the Armed Forces and Military History. Great places to relax or explore more.
It seems like our source on living in Brussels really reinforces so much of what we've discussed, that unique blend.
Yeah, it highlights how Brussels manages to be this high-level international hub, full of diplomats and important meetings, while somehow maintaining a relatively relaxed pace compared to other major capitals like London or Paris.
It's that blend of global and local.
Exactly. The multicultural fabric, that's just part of everyday life there. It defines its feel.
And that source also mentions practical things like getting around.
Yes, it highlights the excellent public transportation system, the metro, trams, buses, plus regional trains connecting everything efficiently. And it's also quite walkable and increasingly bike-friendly in many areas, so it's easy to navigate, both for residents and visitors.
And just the sheer amount of things to do.
Right. The rich culture, the constant events and festivals, the green spaces, the diverse neighborhoods offering endless ways to spend time. It echoes everything the touring guide mentions, the museums, the parks, the nightlife. Speaking of nightlife, Belgian beer.
We haven't even talked properly about the beer.
A huge part of the culture. The sheer variety is astounding. Our source mentions places like the Delirium Cafe, famous for having thousands of beers on its menu. It's an experience in itself just trying to choose.
And food at night. Beyond frights.
Oh, yes. Lots of great restaurants. You can try traditional Belgian dishes like carbonade flamand, a rich beef and beer stew, or moule frites, mussels with fries. Different neighborhoods offer different scenes, from the touristy Rue des Bouchers to hipper areas like Ixelles or Saint-Gilles.
Sounds like there's plenty to keep you busy.
Definitely. And things like browsing the Galeries Royales Saint-Hubert, one of the oldest covered shopping arcades in Europe, or exploring the comic book shops. Belgium is huge for comics. Tintin, the Smurfs.
Right, the comic book wrote murals.
Exactly. Or escaping to larger parks like the Bois de la Combre on the edge of the city. There's always something.
So when you really step back and look at Brussels' entire journey from that simple home in the marsh, growing into a strategic fort,
flourishing into a wealthy medieval capital defined by those powerful guilds,
enduring bombardment and rebuilding in that incredible feat of resilience with the Grand Place,
becoming the heart of a new nation through revolution, modernizing rapidly, sometimes maybe too rapidly,
surviving wars, and then finally embracing this huge role as the capital of Europe.
You just see a city of incredible layers. History isn't buried here, it's visible everywhere. In the architecture, felt in the different neighborhoods, it's woven right into the city's character.
That resilience we keep mentioning, the unique blend of grandeur and, quirkiness like Mannequin Peace, the multicultural dynamism, the dedication to really good things like chocolate, frights, and beer.